Hi, this is Joe again with another review. And since previously I had done a video reviewing the original television series Star Trek, or at least the original series of Star Trek, and since I realized I did that review number too early because this year is the 50th anniversary of the start of the original series, and so I'm going to be doing a top 10 list of my favorite episodes of Star Trek. It had to be 10 plus 1. But of course, we're making 11. But the reason why is because, well, you'll find out why when I do the list. Like I said before, Star Trek has always been one of my favorite science fiction television shows. And of course, you can check out that video I did of the original Star Trek series on my YouTube channel. So I'm going to doing the top 10 list now. I'm going to start going from 10 to 1, of course, the way most people do. And of course, if you see me looking over like this, because I've actually wrote a list, I'm checking my list out. And it's going to start with entry number 10, which of course is the Trouble with Tribbles episode. Now, of course, most people will pick this one number one, or at least in the top three. Me, no. And the reason why is because this episode, and I'm saying don't like this episode. If we didn't like it, it wouldn't be placing in my top 10. But what the Trouble Tribbles episode is the Enterprise gets sent to one of the space stations in the it's on the board with Klingon and Federation space, and it gets sent to guard the screen. And meanwhile, when going the screen, they have these little furry animals, these little fur balls called Tribbles, and they run amok all over the ship because they multiply like rabbits don't multiply this much as the Tribbles, and they eat the grain and they get poisoned. And they found out the green was poison, and they found out the Klingons did. And that's pretty much how the episode ended. It doesn't take hard to figure out who poisoned this green, and but the Tribbles actually became popular because of the way they reacted, and also in this episode they pumped up the humor in this episode, which is a good thing, but they kind of overdid it. Like in Star Trek 5, when they overpumped in the humor. After they did so well in Star Trek 4, they pumped up the humor again in the fifth movie, and it just didn't work. Most of the humor in this episode did work, but I felt like that by the end of the episode, it was like a bit too much. And by the time you get to the end of the episode, you had enough of the humor. So that's why I'm putting at number 10. It was number 1 on a couple of Star Trek marathons they aired here locally on Channel 11 here in New York. In 1991, on the 25th anniversary of the show, they had a top 10 list like I'm doing in this video. And Trouble with Tribbles was number 1. And that's 7 years later, which was the last Star Trek marathon that Channel 11 aired, of the original series anyway. The Trouble with Tribbles also ended up coming up number 1. I think the same two episodes came on numbers 1 and 2 on those two marathons I mentioned. So that's my Trouble with Tribbles episode. As number 10. Number 9, and picking up, and this is definitely one of the better episodes of the series. Fortunately, it put it down. To me, it did put it on kind of low, but some of the other episodes I picked were just as good, or even better. And that is the Balance of Terror episode, which is in the first season, where the Enterprise battles a Romulan, an invisible Romulan ship that only decloaks when they fire their weapon. And this episode, what a lot of people don't know about this particular episode, was that it was actually based on a World War II movie. And it was about like I think it was an American battleship versus a Japanese submarine. One is above the water, and the other, of course, is below the water, and they had like a cat and mouse game. That's what they did in this episode, and it did equally well. They equally did so on both sides, and both sides of the argument. The Federation side, of course, and the Romulan side. And the Romulan commander was played by Mark Lennon. Of course, we know Mark Lennon because he played Spock's father in the episode Journey to Babel, which I didn't put on my list, unfortunately. Um, but he also played Spock's father in three of the Star Trek movies, Star Trek 3, 4, and 6. And he also played Spock's father in a couple of episodes of Star Trek Next Generation. And also, he appeared in the very first scene in Star Trek: The Motion Picture when he played a Klingon. So he played the three biggest alien species at the time in the Star Trek universe: the Romulan, a Vulcan, and a Klingon. He's the only actor to hold that distinction in the Star Trek or appear in anything Star Trek related. And this episode was definitely very, very good. It's been on a couple of the marathons with Star Trek here in New York, so it's it's up there. It's one of the better episodes, and it held the tension throughout the whole episode, really. So that's my number 9 pick. My number 8 pick. It's also a very, very good episode, also from the first season. And most of the episodes that I have picked are from the first season, which is generally where most of the better episodes are. And also the second season as well. But this episode is in the first season called The Devil in the Dark. And it's also one of the first episodes, I think it was like the second episode ever, where you have the Klingon, the Vulcan mind melt. I think this was like the second time it's ever been used in an episode of Star Trek. The first one was Dango in the Mind. And it's also good, a very good episode, but not a great one. And then I put it on my list. It's like borderline for that one because of that particular scene. When the Devil in the Dark is when the Enterprise gets sent to a mining planet, and the miners are being attacked with this creature. And when Kirk and Spock finally confront this creature, the creature wanted to communicate with them, and Spock says the only thing we can to communicate with this thing is if I mine our minds together. And of course they do that, and they found out why because the creature was a mother of the species called Horta. And of course they find out that the miners were accidentally killing her children, and something called eggs. And so she was fighting back the way she could. But the episode was very. And another trivia note: the guy who gets killed first in this particular episode died a couple of years ago. I mean, or at least the actor who played the part of the guy who gets killed first in this episode. The first miner gets killed. Died a couple of years ago. No trivia note. The next one on my list, number 7, is the episode called, also from the first season, called The Naked Time. Now, this particular episode is when Kirk, Spock, and another member of the crew, which of course you know what's going to happen if you've never seen a crew member before, they usually die. And this one dies. Spoiler. But while this crewman was there, he took his glove off to scratch his nose, getting an itch, and his hand gets affected by the disease that affected all the people that was on this colony. And this disease eventually gets spread through the whole ship. And of course, there's only like a couple of people who didn't get affected, and that was McCoy and Scotty. I think they were the only two who weren't affected by this. And maybe Janice Rand were the only ones who didn't get affected. That's about. Or I think the Tanner who also wasn't affected, but everyone else was for the most part. And it just spread like crazy. As a matter of fact, the second Star Trek: The Next Generation episode did a remake of this. Then like a sequel to it, called Naked Now. It actually was the second episode of the Next Generation series. The first one was Encounter at Fall Point. The Naked Now was the second episode of Next Generation. but the Nick of Time, and it did reference what happened in this episode on that one on the Next Generation. So that's the Nick of Time. Number 6, this is one that has like a little asterisk on it because it's actually a two-parter. The only two-part episode in the history of the original series, and that is the Menagerie. Now this one is when Spock is court-martialed, and during the court, and he kidnaps his original captain, Captain Pike, and he takes him to the planet Talos 4, which has been banned from the Federation. Nobody from the Federation or the Federation ship is to go there under any circumstances, and you find out why during the course of the trial. Of course, Captain Pike, and the majority of this episode was footage of the original Star Trek pilot, which of course not many people knew about. Which is actually the episode is actually on my list. Actually, it was called The Cage, starring Jeffrey Hunter as Captain Pike, and they used a lot of most, if not all, of the footage from that episode in this two-parter. That's why it's a two-parter, because it showed almost the entire episode. And of course, I'm not going to spoil what happens at the end of this thing. But the reason why that original part of The Cage was never used, which I'm going to get into in that review when I get to that episode. But it was very clever to use footage of that. There was an unaired pilot, and then in the late 90s, not late 80s, the original pilot was aired on television as part of a 2-hour special with the Next Generation crew in it to help hype. I think it was to help hype Star Trek V at that time. I think that's what it was for. And it aired. I thought it was great. But unfortunately, it never aired again on regular television until 1998 when they had a Star Trek marathon on the 4th of July here in New York City. So that's part of the Menagerie. And as a matter of fact, the episode I'm referring to is actually number 5 on my list, which is The Cage, which was the original unaired pilot of Star Trek. This was Jeffrey Hunter, and also had Major Barrett, who was eventually married Gene Roddenberry, and also had Leonard Nimoy. Leonard Nimoy was the only one who appeared in the original pilot, or at least his character was Mr. Spock, who carried over to the regular series. And the reason why The Cage was not never aired on NBC, at least in an official episode, was because NBC thought it was too cerebral. I mean, you have to think. And actually, NBC didn't want people to think on their episodes, and it didn't end on a fist fight because westerns were popular then, and they wanted almost every episode to end on a bare knuckle fist fight. Fortunately, it didn't happen in this episode, and you gotta use your mind a little bit when watching The Cage. And Jeffrey Hunter, when Star Trek was, when NBC ordered a second pilot for Star Trek, Jeffrey Hunter pulled out. So they had to get a brand new cast, which William Shatner was cast, and DeForest Kelley was hired as part of the Doctor. You also had James Stewart, and you had Joyce Takei, who played Sulu, and Tanner Hood. All those people were there pretty much from the beginning. And when ones were added was like Chekhov was added on and all that. So, but anyway, getting on a tangent for that. But The Cage is very good, very watchable, and it's definitely one of the better episodes of the entire series. And the next episode that I have, well, I'm going to cross the one I have on, which is the Mirror Mirror. I'm going to replace it with another one for my number 4 pick, which is A Private Little War. Which was actually one of the few good episodes from the third season. The Private Little War is damn good. It also brings in the Vietnam War into that episode, which made it work for the 1960s audiences. When that was a Kirk, Spock and McCoy go to the planet where Kirk did a survey there, but 10 years earlier, and he found out that there were really two groups of people living on this planet. There were the villagers, and there were hill people. And they got along. They were getting along pretty okay. Not great, but okay. They respected each other. They respected the way of lives and all that type of thing. Until the beginning of this episode, where Kirk knows that the villagers were having flintlocks, which is their term for rifles or guns, and they were shooting and killing members of people, the hill people. And Kirk was trying to determine what to do because he feels that the hill people is going to get wiped out, especially the leader who was a friend who was the guy who Kirk met 10 years earlier and became friends. And so they reunited after all those years, saying it's great, talk, telling what's going on, and the leader's wife, Tyree's wife, wanted the modern weapons, wanted stronger weapons than what the villagers have, because the villagers are killing us off, and we want help. And so Kirk reluctantly says, "Look, we can't help you guys out because we have a law. We have a law that we can't help, other people allowing to destroy each other. We rule. We can't do it." Yeah, but he's your friend. You're not gonna help your friend now. And he's still hemming and hawing over this until he finds out that the Klingons were the ones helping the villages out. So Kirk says, "Okay, I'm gonna help you guys out now, and give you that much, just as much as the villagers have. You guys are gonna have." And Lee and Tyree still reluctant until, of course, at the end of the episode, when the villagers killed Tyree's wife. And it was major spoiler. But she was a real bitch in this episode anyway. She was hot, but she was a bitch in this episode. And so, of course, when she gets killed at the end by the villagers, then the Tyree says, "Okay, I'm interested in the rifles now. I'm going to kill now." I'm so mad. I'm so pissed off that my wife was killed. Out of my love for her, I'm going to kill now. So that's the episode of Private Little War. This is my fourth favorite episode. My episode number 3 on my list is the second Star Trek pilot, which is Where No Man Has Gone Before. One thing I did like about this episode is that Sally Kellerman is in this episode because she was the original Hot Lips in the MASH live act movie. Of course, eventually they made the television series of MASH based on that movie. But the original Hot Lips was Sally Kellerman, and she was also in Back to School. She's one of my favorite actresses. Unfortunately, I haven't seen her in that much for the last few years, but she's still one of my favorite actresses too, because I still like her voice. She has like a sexy voice. But anyway, she makes an appearance in this episode. So does Gary Lockwood, and Gary Lockwood plays a crewman and Kirk's friend when they go through this void, investigating what happened to this freighter. And that's how the episode starts off. When they investigate what happened to this freighter that was lost in this section of space was checking out, and they go through this void, and Gary Lockwood goes, I won't say nuts, but he develops his ESP abilities, gets upped. It's like 1,000,000 times. And his powers keep growing. His eyes go all white. I mean, it's real creepy science fiction type stuff that happened in this episode, which you really didn't have in the original pilot, The Cage. And this episode did end with a bare knuckle fist fight between Kirk and and the Helmsman there. That's what NBC wanted, and a fist fight, and they got that. So because they liked the episode, and they did have some science fiction elements in it, and it ended in a fist fight, so that's how they improved the series, and of course the rest is history. But when No Man Has Gone Before, it's definitely one of the good episodes. It is kind of like a little wooden at times. I mean, you can tell the pacing's a little wooden, and it's a little slow at times. But it is worth seeing through and watching that particular episode because of that. My number 2 favorite episode is Khan! Yes, it's the episode with Khan in it. It was a space seed. It was also in the first season, of course. It's the episode where made McCall Mortimer famous and the word Khan famous. And of course, this movie is based on Star Trek 2 is based on. It's this particular episode. Of course, McCall Mortimer plays the leader of a race of genetically engineered Supermen who was found lost in space and they're all genetically frozen in the space. It was always a sleeper ship, or the Botany Bay was actually a sleeper ship, and Kirk and his crew woke Khan up because he was the leader, and it was in his capsule that was activated first to wake up. And of course, Khan almost right away plots, and as soon as he was better, he plots to take over the Enterprise. And when his crew eventually does, and I'm not going to say how Kirk beats him, but Kirk does win out at the end, and they do have a big fist fight between Kirk and Spock at the end of this episode. But unfortunately, when they made Star Trek 2, they didn't have the fist fight between the two of them because it was separated. Khan and Kirk. And not only that, but because, like I mentioned in my Star Trek 2 review, Khan filmed all of this stuff before everybody else did. Because of his shooting schedule for Fantasy Island, he filmed his stuff like 2 weeks, about like 2 or 3 weeks before everybody else did. So that's why you had that scene between Khan and Kirk looking at each other through the viewfinder, because he filmed his stuff before everybody else did. As a matter of fact, the bridge set of the Reliant is actually the bridge set was also used for the bridge set for the Enterprise in Star Trek 2. So, but that's why you never had an actual face-to-face fist fight between the two characters in Star Trek 2, because Colin Montalban filmed the scenes right before that. And of course, the one who actually stole this episode was Madeline Rue, who plays the love interest, Khan's love interest, in this episode. And I thought she was great. She was gorgeous. I mean, she really was. Unfortunately, she also passed away, but like 20 years ago. But she was, beautiful to look at. She was a redhead, and she was beautiful to look at, and was attractive anyway to Colin Montalban's character. So my second favorite episode, my number one favorite Star Trek episode, is one that I feel is the greatest episode, not only in Star Trek, but through all the episodes. If you take all the episodes together, to me, this one is the number one on my list. My number one favorite episode is The City on the Edge of Forever. This one is definitely the greatest. It's kind of like a Greek tragedy. So, and that's how Leonard Nimoy described this episode as. It's kind of like a Greek tragedy. This episode starts off with the Enterprise orbiting this planet, and they found that they have waves of time displacement, and was coming from this planet. So the Enterprise was checking it out. While they were checking this out, Sulu gets knocked out or shocked because of the overloaded because of all the time displacements. And so when he was knocked out, McCoy comes up and gives him some shots, couple of drops of this particular medication, and which is pretty dangerous medication if you overdo it. And so McCoy fears Sulu. Sulu was going to be okay, and then he goes another turbulent. It's really turbulence, but it's a time displacement. It shook up the Enterprise, and McCoy accidentally shot himself or overdosed on this medication. He actually shot himself in the stomach and with this medication, and he goes nuts. He doesn't recognize anybody. He says, "Killers, assassins!" He keeps yelling, "Killers, assassins! You won't get me! You won't get me!" And then he runs out of the bridge, goes and transports himself down to the planet, which is at the heart of where the time displacement was. So Kirk, Spock, Scotty, Lieutenant Uhura, and of course a couple of security guards will bring down the planet and check it out, and they found out that the whole thing that was causing the time displacement was actually time portal. And the time portal was actually a machine, and it tells them, look, here's you can go into your own past history. And so it's showing the past history of Earth, really. And McCoy, after Spock gives him a Vulcan neck pinch and knocks him out for a couple minutes, McCoy gets up and he runs through the portal. As soon as he did that, he changed all history. There's no more Enterprise, there's no more Federation, there's no any history, any of their histories have been totally destroyed. And I found out why, because I want to know how can he do that. And he must have changed, they figured out that McCoy had changed something in the past. So the time portal decided to replay where it was, and Spock knew because he was recording images at the time, so he knew exactly when to go back before McCoy changed history. And they go to New York City, 1930. The 1930s New York, and they meet Joan Collins. This is like before Dynasty. And you can see she was really hot. She was smoking. She was gorgeous, in this episode. And Kirk instantly falls in love with Joan Collins' character, and they played a character named Edith Keeler. And Spock, he jury-rigged his tricorder so he could see, images of what McCoy changed. And he saw that Joan Collins' character dies. But then he overloaded it, and then he went back, and then he found out that because McCoy saved Edith Keeler's life, that the United States delayed going into World War II, and Hitler took over the world. And if he dies, that stuff Hitler doesn't take over the world. And McCoy and Kirk is devastated, and falling in love with, and believe him, in love with Edith Keeler. And Spock trying to convince her, look, she has to, it's a gem, she has to die, because if she doesn't, millions would die who didn't die before. And so, of course, when McCoy does get there, and of course he does get better from the overdose, the medication overdose that he had, and of course when Kirk, Spock, and McCoy reunite, here comes Edith Keeler here comes Joan Collins across the street, and he knows that, hey, I think this is the moment when she dies, and he grabs and prevents McCoy from saving her life. And of course, what happens? Of course, she dies, and she actually gets hit by a truck. Spoiler. And of course, that's what. And of course, Kurt and McCoy says to him, "Jim, do you know what you just did? I could have saved her." And McCoy, and this is one of the few times in the series that Spock, his voice was cracking. And he says, "He knows, Doctor. He knows. He knows what he did." And of course, they come back, and everything was as it was before they left. I mean, everything was reset in its place. The Enterprise was there, and all that stuff. And the last line in the episode was when Kirk says, "Let's get the hell out of here," and they just leave. To me, that's definitely the best episode in the series. To me, for the life of me, I don't know why. When they had the Viewer's Choice Marathons a couple of times, I don't know why, for the life of me, they picked the Trouble with Tribbles episode over this one. This one is way better than the Trouble with Tribbles episode. I know I went a little bit longer than I wanted to for this video. That's my picks for the top 10 Star Trek episodes. Please click on the video. Please rate it. You're not going to be able to make comments on this video. I don't want to get into it again why, but you're not going to make any comments. I'm sad to say. Please subscribe to my channel, and please forward this video onto your Facebook pages. Please, you can check out all my videos and online on my YouTube channel at rowdyc.com. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.